Welcome back to the Bridge the Gap podcast. My name's Jennifer. I'm an emotional literacy specialist, an early years professional and co-director at Bridge the Gap Child Mental Health.
Hi, I'm Nikki Webster. I'm co-director at Bridge the Gap. I'm an ACT therapist and mental health nurse.
So, Nick, we're back. And this week we really wanted to talk about worry. And one, obviously, because we're seeing a lot of children who are worried and potentially becoming anxious off the back of that worry and not understanding it. So as a mental health nurse, as a therapist, what's been the biggest learning point for you in terms of what I wish that every parent would know in terms of worry in relation to their child?
It's a great question. I'm coming at this as both a professional and as a parent. Yeah. And I think as a therapist, explaining to children what worry is really imperative. And I think not many of us, because as adults, not many of us have had an emotional education, sadly. We have never learnt the difference between what worry is and what anxiety is. So one of the biggest things we can do for our young people is help them learn that. So worry is the thought process. It's all of that, what if I'm going to make a fool of myself? What if I stumble over my words? What if no one's playing with me in the playground? And anxiety is the physiological feelings that happen as a result of that. So my heart rate is rising. I feel a bit sweaty. I feel more clammy. I feel suddenly really shaky in that environment. Teaching that to our kids is just amazing. Because actually, that's emotional literacy, isn't it? Mm-hmm. We can then understand that actually what's going on in our head is normal, and what's happening in our body is normal. But when do I need to be concerned, and when do I need to have concerns as a parent around that?
Yeah, and why I'm worrying.
Yes.
Because you rightly said there that so many of us, children included, worry in about the future or things that have happened in the past. So very what if kind of worries, or looking back reflectively about interactions they've had or situations they've been in. And I think we do that as adults, don't we? And I think you're so true. The education around that really does make a difference because we didn't have that. And I remember my brain was so active and I'd lie in bed and I'd have all these thoughts and worries running through my head, and I thought there was something wrong with me, and I'd do everything I could to try and get it to stop, but it wouldn't, because what I needed to do was be able to almost take it out of my head and share it with somebody so that they could help me understand what that worry was, that it wasn't a fact that this would or could happen, but help me to problem solve it if it was something that was current and an actual worry. So if you're having problems with your friends at school, that's an actual worry and you can problem solve that together. But if you're worrying about if you are going to have problems with friends at school, that you can't problem solve that in the same way.
Because it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And you're so right. When we worry, naturally, as humans, we're trying to problem solve a situation that feels out of our control and we feel uncertain.
Sorry, Nick, is that your brain literally? Is that what we're doing with worry? Are we trying to problem solve?
Yeah, that's what we've developed as humans as a strategy. But what our brain is trying to do is problem solve and make us feel more certain. Because anxiety, worry, it's all about feeling uncertain and out of control, right? So like you in your bedroom at night, this feels out of my control. What am I naturally learning to do to feel in control of that? Well, I'm going to worry about it. But on point that you were saying, everything we're trying to problem solve through worrying is often not actually happening. It's future based. So what if my friends laugh at me? Well, that's not currently happening. So a fantastic strategy you can use and reflect on for yourself, but also for your children, is how do I reflect and think, well, what is currently happening? Say this was us recently at home, the boiler's broken, right? That's the actual problem. Expensive, just coming up to winter, absolute nightmare, can be doing without it, right? All of my worrying brain is, what if I can't afford it? What if that means I can't afford Christmas for the kids? What if everything's spiralling out of control before you know it? Because naturally I'm a catastrophizer with my worrying as well, Jan.
Because we're in the profession that we're in, it doesn't mean that we don't do these things.
Exactly,
it means we've got the
normal.
knowledge to be able to capture that and bring it back round, like you will do with your boiler.
Yeah, what the actual worry is, the boiler's broken.
Yeah.
And when we keep that current and actual, we can begin to problem solve it because it's not something that hasn't happened in the future.
Mm-hmm. So teaching children about problem solving skills is obviously so much of the work that we do at Bridge the Gap. And I think in terms of what that looks like, often when parents come to us, they're talking about how do I stop my child worrying? Whereas for me, in the world of emotional literacy, and as a parent who tried everything I could to stop the worrying, is I want to reframe that and change the lens of which we're looking that through and look at it as to say, how can I teach my child at this moment and connect with them so that one, they don't feel silly for sharing their worry, because this is something that a lot of children will share is, well, I told my teacher or I told my mum and they told me that it was silly. I don't need to worry about that. And then straight away that makes that worry feel more unmanageable, yes, because, oh, well, why am I feeling that way then? Because I've been told I don't need to. So instead, bringing it out and saying, gosh, that's a really big worry you've got there. That must be uncomfortable. Let's explore that together. I really like... well, there's lots of ways that we can help get worries out of our head. I really like creating a worry station.
That's lovely.
And a space to explore that worry that's comfortable, sensory, and that can be anywhere in the house or even a box or a basket. What is that something, one, that you've noticed in adults that you feel this is something that they've not been taught and it's escalated? And two, where would you start as a parent introducing a space for your child to worry? Because I know as a parent, a lot of the questions will be, well, am I just facilitating
them worrying?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you were saying, professionally with adults, I used to work in the NHS for a long, long time, as you know, worked with adults and young people who were really struggling with their mental health, experiencing a psychosis, in and out of hospital. One of the first things as a mental health nurse that we put in that environment was having what we call a relaxation kit. And that is a bringing together of items that can support us feeling relaxed and calmer. And I think that language that we're using around that is really important. I think that's how we do that with our children, bringing that together, having that space, creating that time, using the right language around it.
Well, Nikki, you know how I feel about that language. One of my biggest bugbears, and I know professionals that use it as well, but for me, the whole worry monster thing is not for me. And I'll tell you why, because I was terrified of my worries as a child, and I was given a set of worry dolls that I was told, well, tell them all your worries.
I remember those. Tiny little.
Made out of tissue paper, folded up. I mean, cute, but ineffective. My worry, after I'd slept all night with them under my pillow, turns out my worry was still there in the morning, and it hadn't taken it away. And what that made me think was, well, what's the point? That's supposed to have worked. So how bad must my worry have been for that not to have worked? But also the term monster, traditionally we view that as something scary, and we're putting that against a word and a concept like worry that for children already feels scary. So I think it obviously heightens that kind of idea that it's something to fear. But also, I hope not so much these days, but certainly when they first came out, it was put it in there and the monster will eat your worry. Well, if my parents are getting divorced, if, there's an illness in the family, or I'm moving house, or I've fallen out with my friend, just because I've written that down and put it in a monster's mouth does not mean that worry's going to go away. So for me, I love the language worry keepers, because it can feel such a lot to have that worry around our head. If we can teach children how to get that out of their head, write it down, draw it, speak it out loud even, and put that somewhere safe to look after that worry. Lovely. So you can do something else. And when you come back to it, it might not feel as uncomfortable because it might naturally have resolved. But if it hasn't and it's still there, you've had a break and you can come back to it and then take that worry to a safe adult that you trust, or a friend, or somebody that you can talk that through with. We have to teach them how to do all of that. And I think a worry monster in the traditional sense almost just, let's just fix that, and it shuts down that conversation.
And I think parents, me included, because I've been there. I remember when my eldest was probably about 7, very anxious, lots of worries, really struggled through that time. It was also COVID, lots of difficulties happening at bedtime, interestingly, which we'll come on to. But we had a little, it was like a fairy plaque, and there was a handprint on it. So every time you put your handprint on this, you can talk to the fairies about your worries and they'll go away. So I've been there, I've done it. And I wonder whether, as parents, because we're trying to stop that and we're worried because they're worrying, there's an element of, this will fix it, this will get it out of their heads and we'll be okay and we'll move on. But you're absolutely right. Creating a space and the right language around it, and actually creating a space in itself, wonderful.
Yeah, because we want to teach them those problem skills you were talking about. So if we close the conversation, we're missing that learning opportunity. And I did it all, Nick. We talk about it all the time. My children are adults, they're 24 and 18, and let me tell you, how I was responding to my 24-year-old's worry when he was younger is very, very different. It was all of, oh, you don't need to worry about that. Don't be silly. Oh, well, here's 3 reasons why you don't need to, worry about that situation. What I was doing was I was closing the door to exploration to be able to teach him those valuable problem-solving skills. But you're absolutely right. It came down to my adult discomfort because I hate seeing... We all do, hate seeing any child worry, but your child worrying, it's painful. So I want to make that stop.
It starts the catastrophizing as well, doesn't it, in your brains?
Yeah, we tell ourselves stories as parents all the time. If they're angry, if they're anxious, does that mean they're going to end up in hospital with a psychosis? They're going to drop out of school. They're never going to get a job. They're never going to have a healthy relationship. They'll be lonely. They'll be dependent on me, all in the space of 2 minutes because of one thing your child said.
So
we've all
true.
been there, haven't we?
It's so true. Just on what you were saying about the worry keeper, love it. I think that's really lovely language, and absolutely facilitating a space that they can also co-regulate with in the home environment, whether that's in their bedroom or in your lounge area, a space where they feel comfortable and that's contained. Like what we do at Bridge the Gap, the spaces we've created at Bridge the Gap are holistic spaces. They're co-regulating with the child, aren't they? You walk into that space and hopefully straight away you can see the child just relax a little bit, and it's lovely to see and observe that. But it could look like a reflection on your lighting. How does that feel when you walk into that environment? What does it smell like? Making that space really just containing emotionally for a young person to be their worry space.
It becomes a third place, doesn't it, in terms of that worry. It helps the brain to buffer some of that anxiety and worry because it's naturally containing. It's so true, and I think even as adults we naturally do that, don't we? We go to our favourite spot on the sofa and we wear our favourite PJs if we're struggling, and we have these little rituals, I think, that help, but helping children to know why and how, it's so important.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
With your early years experience hat on, how would you facilitate that for younger children, would you say, around worry?
I think it's actually easier to introduce it to younger children. So this is something in early years we've done perhaps for longer than for slightly older children. So always with a story. Always in early years with a story. So if I want to introduce any emotional concept, or any concept actually, to a child, it's through a story, and then through play, and then through modelling ourselves. So role playing that from a young age, just language appropriate, really shorter sentences, but just drip feeding that in as they grow. That is powerful because they're learning as they go. And in terms of activities you can do within early years, getting creative around it. You know, children really engage with, they're naturally curious, so they're innately curious. Before the age of 5, that age past 2, you know, everything's why, but why, but why, but why. Yeah. So you've got them naturally there developmentally. They want to learn, so you can utilise stories and play really easily. Yeah, and then just having a worry keeper around, or a family thoughts jar, or however you want to word it, but just making that an active part of your everyday family life is brilliant.
There's so much you can do, isn't there? Yes. And I think just bringing it back to the start with, what is worry? Yeah. What is anxiety? How are those two things different? What might be happening in your body when you are beginning to feel anxious or beginning to feel out of control? So is it that your heart rate's elevated? Is it that you're starting to shake or clam up? Normalising all of that is so key, isn't it? It comes down to everything we do at Bridge the Gap.
And you know, we've got literally the best sections on our Beam platform on that. We've got the relaxation kit, we've got the worry, we've got all the tools parents need to be able to navigate these conversations with their young people, haven't we? So yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, so, and if to end on then, in terms of worry, one thing that if you could go back, so your children are younger than mine, but you've still got a good age span, as we always talk about. What would you go back for your eldest, and what's one thing that you wish you could do differently?
I think one of the biggest things, and it links to what we were talking about with falling asleep, what we've moved away from more than ever in this current day and age is having space to be bored. And when our children are bored, they're processing thought and worry naturally through the day. We're bored less than we've ever been. You know, we're permanently attached to screens, some of us, it feels like sometimes. Busy, busier than ever. So letting them be bored a little bit more and not feeling like I have to fill that in for our children, because at night time they're suddenly bored for the first time because they've got no screen. And my eldest, certainly, that was her time to worry. She's filling in all of that space because they feel really loud and real. Yeah. So I think, allowing my youngest, because I've got a brand new one to do all of this with, who's only one.
Imagine having one from scratch that you can do all this with. How amazing. You've got it. Scratch. What an opportunity.
He's going to be really bored all the time.
Yeah. But do you know what, though? It is developmentally, it's really important for their attention span. So even as babies, there is so much research there to say that we need to give them opportunity to extend their attention span by giving them moments to play on their own. So it is really key. My biggest thing, I think, around, I said, like the dismissing the worry, but also I wish I'd known as a child, and therefore as an adult, to tell my son, I took my son specifically because he's the eldest, but thoughts aren't facts.
Beautiful.
That our brain has all of these words and images, and it's the brain's way of trying to problem solve, of processing memories and wishes and dreams and everything. And some of them can feel a bit uncomfortable, but they're not all facts. And I think that's really comforting for a child.
Perfect.
You always know a Bridge the Gap child because you'll ask them about thoughts and they'll say, thoughts aren't facts. Thanks, Nick. As always, great. Check out loads of great content on our Beam platform. We can help you navigate this parenting journey in a way that you really can support and protect your child's mental health proactively. And we'll see you next week.